city keeps its secrets, but nothing hides forever. This is the evidence trail. I've seen enough crime scenes to know one thing: people lie, but evidence can lead to the truth. And my partner, Chris G., knows how to read it. Each episode, we open the file, trace the facts, and let the science speak. So watch your step. Once you're on the evidence trail, the truth is coming for you.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of The Evidence Trail. I've got a really exciting episode for everyone today. It's something that I've been very curious about, and that's wildlife crime and applying forensic science to kind of track down naughty poachers and people that basically do wrong in the world of, say, like wildlife crime. Today I have with me Emily Gilbey, a forensic science graduate with a passion for wildlife forensics. Emily currently works for the NHS and volunteers for Wildlife ACT, a non-profit organisation focused on protecting Africa's endangered species. Welcome, Emily.
Hi, thank you for having me.
No problem at all. Thanks for coming on the show. Okay, so let's start with you, Emily. That would be the sensible approach rather than me. So tell us about yourself. Who is Emily and what first drew you into forensic science?
So I'd say it's probably a little bit obvious that I'm a massive wildlife enthusiast. I grew up surrounded by nature and animals, and actually when I was younger, one of my very early birthday presents was a day in the life as a zookeeper, because that's what I was desperate to be as a child. And then my passion for science really came during secondary school. I found that while I found other subjects a little bit more challenging, science was always something that, I understood a little bit more, I had a passion for. And I was also really lucky because I had teachers who pushed me towards pursuing science in further education. And I'm sure many people who study forensics, policing, anything in criminal justice will be able to relate to this. I had a true love for true crime documentaries and investigative programs. So it felt natural to head that way. So then I studied criminal psychology and forensic science at college. So that's where the path really sort of started.
I see. So I can kind of see where the wildlife crime thing has come from. So you've had this passion to be a zookeeper. You've got this curiosity about true crime, and then you've gone and done forensics. At what point did the two cross over for you?
So when I graduated in 2024, I think I really wanted to first look at the options that I had before settling into one role. And when I was doing my research, I came across pages and pages of wildlife forensics and this new up and coming area and how forensics can be applied to wildlife crime. And I think, not to sound cliche, but it was a light bulb moment for me, realizing that I could use my passion for wildlife and conservation and cross it with my newfound expertise in forensics, and I could conjoin the two together. And I found an academy in South Africa that allowed me to train in wildlife forensics. So that was the first moment that I realised I could cross them over, and it felt like a bit of a no-brainer to head that direction, given my background and my passions as well.
Yeah, definitely. What about before you got into forensics? You said you wanted to be a zookeeper. What happened to that sort of passion? Did it just sort of dwindle away, or?
No, it definitely didn't dwindle away, but I think I didn't feel there was a lot of options to pursue it after secondary school, heading into college. I felt more pushed in the direction of science from peers and teachers to pursue that side of things. So it definitely didn't dwindle. It just took a step in the back burner. And then as soon as I graduated, realising that I could bring them all back together was really where it all came together.
Yeah, oh, fantastic. So what sparked your interest in applying forensic science to wildlife crime specifically? Was there a moment or experience that pushed you in that direction?
I think when I had got to South Africa, when I first went, a moment that really made me sure that I wanted to follow this path was just seeing the collaboration of research that was being done. I mean, there were so many people around me who I felt were just as passionate about wildlife as me and were also on the same path. It felt that it was more achievable to now follow this dream. I mean, we had people who were researching different fingerprinting techniques on scales, fur, and eggs. And we had people who were training AI cameras to detect at what stage insects were in their life cycle to help with forensic entomology. And then myself, I did isotope analysis to help geographical location of tortoises. Just seeing people band together and have a true love for research, conservation, wildlife, knowing that I could implement forensics into this as well, it made me sure that this was the path that I wanted to take. And again, not to sound cliche, but I haven't looked back. It's definitely something that I'm really keen to pursue as well.
Yeah, I mean, that is a passion of mine at the moment, and I think you've touched upon it then, is just to basically spread the word on forensic science and show that there are people out there that are doing it. Because my next door neighbour growing up was a crime scene investigator. Her name's Sharon. Sharon, I doubt that you're listening because you've probably got your hands full with your child, but and I would look to her and think, well, she's a real person. She's like next door to me. She can do the job. So why can't I really? And I thought, not everyone has a Sharon in their life. So I thought about doing this podcast and basically, being the kind of voice in people's ears to let them know that they can do it. And did you find that being around that kind of team, where you were in South Africa, that was, giving you a boost to do it, basically?
Yeah, no, 100%. I think when I first started doing the research, even though I'd realised forensics was something that could be applied to wildlife crime, it felt difficult to ascertain as to where do you start, what job roles do you end up in, what exactly is entailed in these specific job roles. It wasn't a clear-cut path to follow, but once I had gotten there, I realised that it was a path I wanted to follow, whether I knew exactly what the next step was or not. It feels, I mean, I'm also trying to get into this career as well, so it feels like something that I'm taking step by step and still moving towards that.
Yeah, so you're not fully in the career at the moment. We touched upon you being in the NHS, and I know that we use an expert that also works for the NHS, and then her sort of side hustle in a way is like forensic science. So are you hoping to one day take it on full time?
Yes, no, absolutely. I think, unfortunately, one of the limitations of working in wildlife, whether that be forensics or just general conservation or wildlife biology, anything like that, is sometimes the positions can be limited. It can be competitive, and that's due to lack of funding. There's not enough funding in the wildlife sector. So having the stability of being able to work for the NHS and also pursue this career on the side as well is definitely a bonus in my favour.
Yeah, definitely. We found that in my last podcast with Mark, the botanist, is that, it's quite a niche forensic discipline, and there's just not a lot of funding into it at all.
Yeah.
He's one of the few in the country that does what he does, just because, there's not enough money behind it, which is a shame, really, because it's so important, these forensic disciplines. So let's talk about your experience in South Africa. So you spent some time interning in South Africa. I've never been to South Africa. I know I've got some listeners that are from South Africa, so hello to those. But for people that have never been to South Africa, what was your experience like sort of day to day? And did anything there sort of happen or occur that sort of changed the way you see wildlife crime and conservation?
Yeah, I mean, South Africa is a gorgeous, gorgeous place. If you do get the chance to go, absolutely. In answer to your question of day to day, it was different every day, so it's hard for me to kind of explain what the events were every single day. But so I spent my first half of my time there at the academy learning the applications of forensics to wildlife crime, what wildlife forensics actually was, mock crime scenes, lectures. And then the second half of my time I spent at Cape Town University conducting the isotope research. And that really was collecting samples from the field, and then the other half was laboratory work, so processing the samples and analysing and lots of paper writing. So it was definitely a different experience every single day, which is really what I loved about it. But I think the ultimate satisfaction of doing the research was really what I enjoyed the most. And I think it really was my first experience into how vast wildlife crime actually is, how much animals and wildlife really are exploited. I hadn't really had a true in-person experience of that before. So although it's saddening to see, I definitely appreciate it, because I think it was one of those things that really gave me the motivation to follow down this path. I mean, speaking about the lack of funding and the competitiveness in the field, to me, the experiences that I had made it worth it to follow this career.
Yeah, definitely.
When the flames are gone, the search for answers begins. Prometheus Forensic Services are independent specialists in fire and explosion investigation, delivering clear court-ready evidence across the UK and internationally. They hold ISO 9001 certification for fire investigation, a mark of quality you can trust. Prometheus also delivers specialist training courses for police, fire service and independent investigators, from introductory programs through to advanced fatal fire investigation. Find out more at www.prometheus-fs.co.uk. Prometheus Forensic Services, revealing the truth behind the fire.
It must be hard being out there and seeing, like animals that have been in distress and things, and knowing that there's more that I guess we all can do to sort of help and stop that, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. You've spoken about isotope analysis. Can you break down what that is in simple terms, and how you actually use this to sort of tackle wildlife crime in the real world?
Yeah, so I would say the key concept of isotope analysis is the classic "you are what you eat." So an isotope is a version of a chemical element that has the same number of protons but a different number of neutrons. But I think crucially, I should note, it does not decay over time. So it's something that we can always refer back to. And when animals, including us, eat food and drink water, the chemicals within the food and the water that's digested become integrated into bones, hair, feathers, claws. And so we can take samples of any of those and look at the chemicals present. And these chemicals vary dependent on geographical location. So we're then able to determine where an animal has been and what its natural habitat is and what it's used to digesting. In terms of application in the real world, I think the most important element of this research was being able to place animals back into their rightful home. Knowing that we're placing an animal back into its rightful habitat is not going to cause disruption to other animals, and knowing that the animal is back in its rightful home.
Yeah.
And I think the other application that I also wanted to touch on was that, unfortunately, many animals are poached from wild but falsely advertised as captive breeds. And in analysing what they've eaten, we can determine that, because captive animals have a consistent diet. It's the same diet in and out during the day, whereas a wild animal will have a varied diet. It survives off what it can find. So being able to determine that will give us the proof and the standing in court to be able to help prosecute these crimes as well. It's good evidence to have.
And can you sort of determine almost like a geographical map of, say, for example, if there's something that an animal might eat in a certain location that's only available in that location, would that then give you that idea of where that animal has come from?
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what it's used for. So we can also tell where an animal has migrated as well. So we can follow the path of what it's digested. It almost stacks up, almost like, when you take a hair from a human, and you can tell if they've taken drugs at what point in that hair as well. It's sort of like a diary of where that animal has been, and it's actually really commonly used in archaeology to determine diets of humans up to 3,000 years ago. So that's how we're able to determine what people in ancient Rome ate, to determine what their status was in society. So if you were eating a rich diet of rich foods, we would be able to determine that you were probably better off than the other people who were surviving off of just bread and butter. So it's a really common tool. It's not just used in wildlife forensics, it's used in a lot of scientific analysis.
That is so interesting. I had no idea that you could gain all that information from bones, and I dread to think what they're going to find if they dig up me and just be like, oh, just lived on McDonald's and fast food all the time. Oh, wow. So my next question, when applying forensic science to wildlife crime, what are the biggest challenges compared to working with human samples? Are there limitations we're still trying to overcome?
Yes. So speaking of just drawing it back to isotope analysis, one of the things that was a problem is that there's just a huge lack of reference data. We know that with human forensics, we've got ample reference samples to refer back to. However, it's still lacking in wildlife forensics. And I also think something that most people would probably think about is the crime scene itself. Where do you put the border for the crime scene? It may have sat there for some time. The samples might have degraded due to weather conditions. And we often don't have the access to common evidence that would be found in a human-centred crime, so CCTV or witnesses and other elements that just wouldn't be available with a wildlife crime scene, unfortunately. And unfortunately, wildlife crime is inherently international, so it causes issues because law enforcement and forensic standards and admissibility of evidence in court and also lab capacities varies greatly around the world, whereas wildlife crime is spread out vastly as well. So that's definitely also an issue.
Yeah, because I mean, this happens in the wildlife, doesn't it? It doesn't happen in built-up urban areas where you do have access, like you say, to witnesses, CCTV, number plate recognition, and all this. People can do it relatively undetected.
I don't think you quite realise how much evidence you do have to hand when you're looking at human-related crime, and then you get chucked into wildlife crime and realise you do have the bare minimum to work off of.
Yeah, but I encountered something sort of similar to this question when I was just starting off as a forensic assistant, and I was sorting out the lab forms, and basically there'd been a crime where someone had broken into this family house, taken a knife and sadly killed their hamster. Sydney, his name was. I don't know why I always remember the name of the hamster, but yeah, I always remember poor Sydney. And basically what they'd done was they'd recovered the hamster, recovered the knife, and asked me to send this off to a forensic provider to determine whether or not the knife that was found on our suspect matched that of, Sydney the hamster. And they said, the lab basically said, we cannot do it. We're not equipped to deal with, like DNA from animals at the moment. We could tell you that it's animal blood, but we can't tell you, that it is exactly that hamster. Do you know if we've come anywhere nearer to that in your experience?
I haven't personally, but I think we should always all remember Sydney when we're thinking about the lack of reference that we have. I mean, the fingerprinting that we have, the DNA analysis that we have, the whole host of reference data in human forensics is just endless. Whereas the small areas of wildlife forensics that we can do is limited by things that we can solve. So having these reference samples would do work wonders if we had access to them. Given the small amount of evidence that we do have, it'd be nice to be able to make strides where we can.
I think that's the next step, isn't it, for this world, is to build up all that data like we have the humans. So from your perspective, where in the world are wildlife crime challenges most urgent or complex, and why?
So I would say, in my opinion, there's not one hot spot for wildlife crime. Unfortunately, I think everybody knows it's spread all over the world. I mean, if you think about South Africa, Mozambique and Tanzania, it's really heavily poached from high value species, the rhino, the elephant, but also Vietnam, Thailand, and Indonesia, we know that that's also not only a major source, but a heavy transit and consumption hub for wildlife crime. And sometimes it can also be entangled with other crimes, logging, mining, and drug trafficking in places like Brazil and Colombia. And unfortunately, we all know China is a massive hub for wildlife crime. The demand in markets to sell and trade in the products produced from them and the animals themselves is especially bad there as well. And I think it's also important to note that the same criminal networks that exploit multiple species don't work in one area. So if we focus on one area, we risk missing the wider issue of wildlife crime as well.
Yeah, definitely. Bringing it sort of closer to home, though. So, as you can tell by my accent, listeners, I'm from the UK, as is Emily. So, what could we be doing here in the UK to better protect and conserve our wildlife?
So, for me personally, I think education about the subject is really the way it's heading and the thing that's going to really spread this far and make people understand that this is an issue that we do have to address. People won't want to care if they don't understand what's going on. And I think, speaking from personal experience, I can't speak about related subjects, but during my university experience, it was heavily surrounded by human mock crime scenes, DNA analysis of humans. There was an element of discussion about the applications of forensics towards crime involving animals. It was always centered around human crime. And I think it's also important to note that you don't have to have a career in forensics. You don't have to have a career in conservation. Anybody can help protect the wildlife in the UK. You can plant wildflowers in your garden, put low available water in your garden for the summer. You don't have to be in this area to make those sort of steps.
And you can certainly do that with like kids, can't you? At a young age, get them
Absolutely.
really, really interested. I remember watching an interview, and it was Barack Obama interviewing David Attenborough, and Barack Obama said to David Attenborough, he said, "When did you first sort of really get into wildlife and nature?" And he said, in his glossy, beautiful voice that he has, he said, "Oh, I'm not going to try and do it. Mr. President, that's not the question you should be asking me. The question is, when did everyone else stop?"
Yeah.
Because he said, when you're a child, you like lift up a stone and you're just fascinated by all the wildlife that's there. That's it.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
you go by a little bit of water and you'll look at like all the all the tadpoles forming, and you go to the beach and look for crabs and all the worms that are coming out. And he said, as we just get older, people just lose interest in it. And he said, I never did. And I just thought that's a really, really good point. We could do a lot with our kids, can't we? Like put hedgehog houses out, and like you say, leave low water, plant flowers for, all our busy bees that are out there. And there's a lot more that we can be doing, I think, and particularly getting our children involved, because then that gets us adults involved and we engage in it and everything.
Yeah.
I've got a little.
I'm very we're having this discussion on his birthday as well.
We are, aren't we? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that was just pure coincidence. But yes, happy birthday, David.
Absolutely right. Yeah, I think, I mean, he says no one will protect what they don't care about, and no one will care about what they have not experienced.
Yeah.
So we all need to remember that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, powerful words. Do you have sort of any stories that you've got about, people and like the organisations that you've worked for, just bringing these people to justice, where this forensic science has a positive impact on cases?
So not in prosecution, but I think one that I always remember is the Florida Panther, which was when only 24 were left. And forensic scientists who were working in conservation genetics were looking at introducing females into the group in order to save them from dying. And conservation genetics is something that I'm starting to actually take a real interest in as well. because I think there's so many elements of forensics that can be applied to conservation, and they just keep cropping up for me. And when I first started, I wasn't really too sure as to how. I felt like I was asking myself the question of how specifically does forensics help wildlife crime, but the answer really is there's just so many avenues. There really is so many applications that forensics can have, and I just think the more we put into working on reference data, the more we put into educating people about the subject, the more it's going to grow. And it's no longer going to be a low risk, high reward crime. We want to turn it into a high risk, low reward crime. And that's, the ultimate goal of everything that people are doing. And I think it's really great to see so many people getting involved.
Yeah, definitely. That's what I would always say to burglary victims when I was a CSI. You want to make your house a high risk to burgle and a low reward that they're gonna run away with, because basically someone will walk down the street, and if they're a criminal, they're thinking, right, what house can I break into that has that low risk if all the houses look the same, or if there is that high risk, what is that high reward? And it's just going to keep on happening, wildlife crime, if there is always a...
Unfortunately, at the moment, it is very low risk, high reward, and that's what we need to change.
Yeah. And it's a shame that there is so much focus on global warming, which of course is important, but in the same breath we should be talking about wildlife crime and the species that we could end up losing, particularly in the wild, if we just don't act and don't do something and don't fund it more.
I think people, especially in the UK, sort of struggle to sort of ascertain as to what wildlife crime is. I think most people's heads automatically go to, people abusing animals in the home with RSPCA, and they sort of go into that direction, forgetting that there's a whole host of wildlife crime, and people do need to be educated on what that is and how it can not only affect these animals, but how in turn, if we ignore it, it will start to affect us.
Yeah, definitely. And it does happen here. I mean, you think about wildlife crime, you do think about the countries that you've mentioned, but I've been to plenty where you've got like fox hunting going on, and then you've got livestock that have been attacked and killed. And other than Sydney, I also have recovered like an owl as well that we thought had got shot. They're such beautiful creatures, these owls. And yeah, you think if people just keep on going around just killing them for either fun or medicine, which I just think is a load of rubbish anyway, then yeah, we're going to lose all these beautiful creatures, which is a shame, really.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we've spoken a lot about all the things that we could be doing more, but what gives you hope in this field?
So I think the thing that gives me most hope in this field is really seeing how many passionate people are entering the field and then pushing for change. It definitely gives me the confidence that progress is being made. When I had my time in South Africa, seeing all the different types of research that was being done, including my research, which was adding references to the database, we now have the ball rolling and people are developing more techniques and becoming more aware of how this can help. I mean, I've also met a lot of people on LinkedIn who are transitioning from forensics into wildlife crime and who are already there. And I think that's definitely what gives me the most hope, but also that technologies are advancing. People know that AI is becoming more powerful. DNA sequencing is becoming more powerful. These tools that we have to hand are definitely becoming more useful and more applicable in wildlife crime, and hopefully one day they'll sit on par with human crime in a world where we can just as easily scan a fingerprint and help wildlife as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I did, speaking about fingerprints and wildlife, I went to the zoo and, like the monkey had its hand up against the window, and they've got ridge detail just like you and me have. And yeah, I think that maybe there's more that we can do with that one day. If, say, for example, if a monkey has been taken from one place to the other, it's all about tying the two like we would with humans.
Yeah. I think people are starting to recognise that it's a serious global issue rather than just a conservation problem, which is definitely nice to see. People are definitely becoming more aware.
Yeah. Yeah, let's hope that yeah, more people, take up take up arms now and do more to protect our wildlife as well. Because I think we just live in a beautiful world, really, and it would be such a shame to lose some of the species that we've got out there. What I also hope as well is that we just keep advancing in the field. We keep on developing like new research. There's more people like you out there that do more about it, and we will catch up to the poachers and, like you say, make it far more harder for them to do what they're doing at the moment.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's the aim. I think that's what everybody in this industry is working towards, whether you're a wildlife biologist, whether you're trying to get into wildlife forensics, or you're a conservationist. I think that's everybody has the same end goal.
Definitely. So what's next for you, Emily, and your career
So
path?
so I'm hoping to start my master's. I'm going to be looking to do genetic forensics and wildlife forensics. And I'm off to Cameroon in September as well. So I'm doing work out there with some pangolins. And I thought, I've done the lab side of things and I've done the field side of things. I thought, what better next step than to work with an animal that's the most trafficked in the world, which is the pangolin. So that's where things are taking me next.
Yeah. What is a pangolin? I should know this. I should have done my research.
God, how do I explain what a pangolin is? They look slightly like armadillos, I think, but
Okay.
I don't want to say that. And so that their
Offend the
scales,
armadillos. Yeah.
and you walk on their back legs, they've got a pointy nose with a nice long tail, and they roll up into balls to protect themselves.
Oh,
You've
wow.
definitely seen one.
I'm
If you
sure
look
I
at a
have.
photo, definitely would have seen one. And unfortunately, they are really, I mean, they are the most trafficked mammal in the world because their scales and their meat, everything on them is used for traditional medicine. Their meat is also classed as sweet meat, so rich, affluent people choose to eat it. They see it as a delicacy. Unfortunately, just every part of them is taken for some sort of use by humans.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to see the whole thing. So have the lab experience, have the field experience, have the hands-on experience with animals that are suffering. So this is a step that I'm really excited to take as well. And I will send you a photo of a pangolin so you know.
Yes, please do. Oh, fantastic. So if anyone wants to get into wildlife crime and forensics, what can they do?
Oh my gosh, where to start? I would say definitely start with research. Think about what it is particularly that draws you towards that area, and if it's specifically forensics, if you have a area or topic that you're interested in. So I was really interested in isotope analysis, and that was something that I wanted to study when I got to South Africa. I think that's definitely a head start, but like I said before, it is the sort of career that feels like there is no direct step 1, 2, 3, 4. It doesn't feel like you can enter a position and then work your way up or head in this direction and know that it's the right one. I think just having an all-round skill set, so keeping up with your lab skill sets and having experience in the field and having hands-on animal experience as well, definitely will give you the kickstart to start in. But then the steps as of after, it's really down to you to see what you think is going to be the best move.
Yeah, definitely. And if anyone wants to get in contact with you rather, how can they go about that?
Yeah, no, I welcome people to get in contact with me. Absolutely. You can contact me on LinkedIn. I will be welcome to answer any queries, or you can email me as well.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Emily. I'm sure the listeners found that as interesting as I did. I certainly learnt more than I intended to learn. My head is kind of hurting a bit. But
with good knowledge that you're going to pass on and
know.
educate you
Yes.
about whenever they ask about forensics.
Yeah,
this is an area that it can be used for.
Yeah, no, it's been really, really interesting. I'm sure the listeners loved it. So yeah, like Emily said, if you've got any queries for her, then catch her on LinkedIn, Emily Gilbey, and yeah, she'll be happy to answer any questions. But yeah, keep on looking after the wildlife out there, everyone, and I'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you. Bye.
The night folds over the city like a trench coat collar turned up against the rain. And somewhere out there, another story is already bleeding through the cracks. If you want to keep riding shotgun with us, subscribe to The Evidence Trail wherever you get your podcasts. If you want to spot beyond the flashing blue lights, join our Patreon. Subscribers get exclusive episodes, early access drops, and case files the rest of the world won't hear until the smoke clears. And when the mic goes silent, find us at Evidence Trail on social media. Until next time, stay curious. In a city like this, evidence is like a ghost in the fog. And if you're a crook walking the evidence trail, watch where you step.